Are you wondering if the battery life on the new Samsung Galaxy Watch 8 is actually any good, and should you maybe get this watch? So we have had the watch for a while now, and if I compare actually to my previous Galaxy Watch that I used, actually I'm very satisfied with the battery life overall on this watch. So when it comes to the official specs, so before I actually tell my actual experience, so on the Galaxy Watch 8 basically, so on both models, basically the rated specs are 40 hours without always on display and 30 hours with always on display. And also this is size for both models. Over here I have that 40mm model, and if you compare the Galaxy Watch 8 versus 7, I think we had 8% larger battery so on this one. And also if you compare the dimensions of this watch versus basically the other Galaxy Watch, then again this is even much slimmer watch. So they have increased the battery size, but also even managed to actually shrink down the watch, which is also absolutely insane. So maybe first let's start with GPS drain test. As you see, I'm starting at 83%, and I'm going to do 1 hour of simply walking around and see how much it consumes. By the way, when it comes to GPS lock times, you see it's blazing fast, so it only took like 3 seconds to fully lock on in urban area. Okay, I let it track for 1 hour and 30 minutes instead. So let's check our battery. As you see, 72%. So in 1.5 hours, essentially it drained 11%, which is actually very decent. So I suppose on a full charge on 100%, you could maybe get like almost like 15 hours of tracking time basically of GPS, which is actually very impressive on this watch. By the way, also this was with the screen off, so basically I kept my watch like this with the screen off essentially, and it was tracking the exercise. Also I do not have the always on display. If you basically keep your screen on during exercise tracking always, also maybe you have your always on display, obviously the runtime will be less, but again yeah, probably you'll see it dropped even further, so maybe a bit over 11% in 90 minutes. And next, when it comes to standby time, I also find it's very decent on this watch. So personally I actually do not wear the watch at night to track sleep. I do not really care about the stuff, to be honest. So I simply like take off the watch, and I have basically for the past few days noted down basically what my percentage is before I actually take off the watch and leave it on a table, and basically in the morning when I eventually picked up. So this is what I have actually came up with. So essentially in 30.5 hours basically. So if you simply leave your watch so without using it, by the way, since I got this watch, I haven't really configure basically any settings to get any extra battery life. I actually do not use always on display, but if you do not wear this watch, your always on display also doesn't actually turns on. That's what I find. So again, without playing around with this watch, so this is actually the standby time. So on a full charge, so you could maybe get like 122 hours. So that's by 24, so essentially like 5 days of standby time basically if you simply leave this watch somewhere and do not use it. That also is fairly decent. So again, this is for that 40mm version. On the 44mm version you'd obviously get even more because it has that bigger battery as well. And next, let's test power consumption when you simply watch maybe some YouTube videos. So you see I'm at 25% at the moment, and I'm going to basically do this for 20 minutes. So let's go to our browser and open up some YouTube videos. By the way, we can fully watch YouTube on this watch. So when it comes to the brightness, I have set it at around half basically. So I have the auto brightness. We have some ads that we have to skip, so I will basically start this. Also, you see, I can also go full screen, and I will simply leave it for 20 minutes. Okay, so 20 minutes, and let's check now. So you see we have 13%. So in 20 minutes we dropped from 25% to 13%. That's actually very impressive. And probably streaming YouTube videos on this watch would be the highest demanding task you can actually do on the watch. So maybe if you simply use some maps, you can definitely get way better basically runtimes than this one, I imagine. Also, if you were maybe to drop basically the brightness of your screen, I think you would get well over like 3 hours basically of YouTube playback, considering the extremely small size on this watch. Like 3 hours of YouTube streaming, yeah, I think that's actually very good. And if you are a very light user, so on this watch I imagine you could maybe get around 2 to 3 days of actual usage if you actually do not have always on display. And also maybe if you play around with the settings but still without battery saver. That's what I basically think you can get on this watch after actually using this watch for a while now. And if you compare the battery life versus Galaxy Watch 7, I think the battery life is actually very similar. So even though on this watch we get slightly larger batteries than on the Galaxy Watch 7, also actually the display brightness is way brighter on this guy. So if you are actually a power user who uses a lot of screen basically, so even though this has got a slightly larger battery, it also has more power hungry screen essentially. So if you are a power user, I think you will probably get the same battery life basically as on the Galaxy Watch 7. However, if you are a light user, so who doesn't use his screen much, simply uses it for very basic tasks, I think you could maybe get like around 15% better like runtime basically compared to the Galaxy Watch 7, because again, not only slightly larger battery, but also the operating system on this watch also is slightly more efficient than on the Galaxy Watch 7. And if you compare maybe to Galaxy Watch 6, 5 and 4, then definitely there is actually like notable jump basically in the battery life. So on those watches, obviously we had the much older, more like power hungry CPU, which again wasn't that efficient. And basically after also using those watches, so again I have used pretty much every Samsung Galaxy Watch there is. So again, these are like realistic estimates basically on those. So definitely on 7, 8, yeah, there is obviously nice battery jump. And again, these estimates are over here for the 40mm version. And if you are a very light user who also maybe plays around with these watch settings. However, if you get the larger 44mm version of the Galaxy Watch 8, then on that one we get by a third larger battery, so literally 33% larger battery than on this smaller guy. So essentially you could probably even get better runtime even than this one from the 44mm version if you are again a light user who doesn't maybe uses his screen much. And finally, also let's check out the charging speeds on this watch. I'm going to start at 5%. I do not want to discharge it much further. I'm going to start my timer. As you see, when it comes to the estimate, it says 1 hour and 7 minutes for a full charge. And this is the final result for the charging test. If you compare the Galaxy Watch 8 versus previous Galaxy Watch 7, then I find the actual total charge time is pretty much identical on both of these watches. And overall, when it comes to battery life and also charging speeds on the Galaxy Watch 8, it's definitely a very clear improvement over, for example, something like Galaxy Watch 6, 5 and 4. However, if you compare maybe to the Galaxy Watch 7, then if you are basically a light user, you might expect to get maybe 15% better battery life. So again, for very light usage. However, if you are a power user, I think the battery life on the Galaxy Watch 8 and 7 would be pretty much identical. By the way, Samsung sent me extra $50 discount link for you that you can use to get this watch much cheaper. For example, you can pick up the smaller guy, which I have over here, for literally a bit under $300 if you use a special discount link in the description. Also, if you follow that link, you also receive extra trade-in deals. So again, enhanced trade-in deals actually. For example, if you trade in your past Galaxy Watch 7, you can receive like $200 back, making this watch cost only like $100. Also, I checked, you can pretty much trade in any of your old Galaxy Watch, such as 6, 5, 4, and even older, for very good deals as well. By the way, after you click the special discount link, you have a strict 30-minute time limit to actually make the purchase, otherwise this extra $50 off discount will expire. So again, maybe only click the link when you are actually ready to purchase the watch.